Consumer Reports just dropped a bombshell, and it's aimed straight at Chevy's upcoming cheapest pickup truck, the so-called $22,000 bargain that's already being hyped as a game changer. But here's the brutal truth. This truck might be cheap for a reason, and Consumer Reports is basically warning buyers to think twice before lining up at the dealership. On paper, Chevy wants this truck to look like a hero for the working class. 22 grand for a brand new pickup sounds almost impossible in today's market, especially when full-size trucks are casually pushing $60,000 or $70,000. Chevy knows that number alone will grab attention, and it will, but Consumer Reports dug past the price tag, and what they found raises some serious red flags. First, let's talk about what you're not getting. To hit that $22,000 price, Chevy had to cut corners, and they didn't use a scalpel, they used a chainsaw. We're talking bare bones interior, minimal tech, cheap materials, and features that even budget cars have now are suddenly optional or completely missing. Consumer Reports points out that this truck feels less like a modern pickup and more like a time machine back to 2008. Then there's the powertrain, and this is where things get uncomfortable. The engine is designed to be efficient and cheap, not strong or durable. Consumer Reports is already questioning whether this setup will hold up under real truck use, towing, hauling, and daily abuse. If you're planning to use this as an actual work truck, not a grocery getter with a bed, that should make you nervous. Safety is another area where alarms are going off. To keep the price low, advanced driver assist features are either stripped down or absent altogether. Consumer Reports notes that competing trucks, even used ones, offer better safety tech at similar prices. That means buyers are trading modern protection for a lower monthly payment, and that's a deal that can go wrong fast. And here's the part nobody wants to talk about: resale value. Consumer Reports warns that ultra-cheap trucks often age badly in the used market. When materials wear out faster, tech becomes outdated instantly, and reliability is questionable. Resale value tanks. That $22,000 deal could end up costing more over time than a slightly more expensive, better-built alternative. Chevy's strategy is clear. They want headlines. They want clicks. They want people saying, "Finally, an affordable pickup." But Consumer Reports is basically saying this truck exists to hit a price point, not to deliver long-term value. It's designed to look attractive on a dealer lot, not necessarily to survive years of hard use. The harsh wording from Consumer Reports has already sparked backlash, with critics bluntly suggesting that only uninformed buyers will fall for the hype. Not because the truck is completely useless, but because buyers won't realize what they're giving up until it's too late. Once the honeymoon period is over, the missing features, underwhelming performance, and questionable durability become impossible to ignore. And that's the real controversy here. Chevy isn't lying about the price, but the price doesn't tell the whole story. Consumer Reports is urging buyers to look beyond the sticker and ask one uncomfortable question: what did Chevy remove to make this truck so cheap? And are you willing to live with those sacrifices every single day you own it? Because in a market where used trucks, compact pickups, and even rival brands offer more for just a little extra money, this $22,000 truck might not be the smart buy it pretends to be. And as Consumer Reports continues to peel back the layers, the gap between affordable and worth it is starting to look wider than ever, especially when you consider how this truck is expected to perform once real owners start putting real miles, real loads, and real stress on it over time. And that's where Consumer Reports really twist the knife, because long-term ownership is where cheap trucks usually expose themselves. Early impressions might seem fine during a test drive, but Consumer Reports is focused on what happens after 30,000, 60,000, or 100,000 miles. When squeaks start showing up, trim begins to loosen, and mechanical shortcuts stop being theoretical and start costing real money. They also point out something Chevy fans don't want to hear. This truck risks cannibalizing Chevy's own lineup in the worst way. Buyers who stretch just a little more could land a used Colorado or even an older Silverado with better engines, stronger frames, and far more features. Consumer Reports questions why anyone would choose a brand new truck that feels compromised when proven alternatives exist at nearly the same price. Then there's the psychological trap, and this is where a lot of buyers get burned. The idea of new is powerful, no previous owner, no mystery maintenance history. That $22,000 price taps directly into that emotion. Consumer Reports warns that Chevy is betting buyers won't do the math on what they're losing in capability, comfort, and longevity just to say they bought a brand new pickup. Even the ride quality doesn't escape criticism. Consumer Reports suggest the suspension tuning favors cost savings over comfort or stability, which means rough roads feel rougher and highway driving feels less confident. For a vehicle that's supposed to appeal to everyday drivers as well as workers, that's a big miss, and it's something you can't ignore once you live with it day after day. What really stings is how this truck is being marketed. Chevy's messaging leans heavily on toughness, simplicity, and back to basics truck culture. Consumer Reports calls that out as clever branding because simplicity sounds noble until you realize it often translates to outdated engineering and fewer safeguards. There's a fine line between simple and stripped, and this truck seems to cross it. And don't forget maintenance costs. Consumer Reports hints that cheaper components don't just wear faster, they can be harder to repair properly. When parts aren't built to last, even small fixes add up over time. Suddenly that affordable truck starts quietly draining your wallet in ways buyers never expected when they saw that headline price. This is why Consumer Reports keeps hammering one central message: price alone does not equal value. Chevy's $22,000 pickup may attract first-time truck buyers, budget shoppers, and people desperate for something new. But those same buyers are often the least prepared to deal with compromises that only reveal themselves after ownership begins. And as more details continue to surface, the question gets louder and more uncomfortable. Was this truck built for people who actually need a pickup? Or was it built for people who just want to say they own one, even if that ownership comes with regret creeping in mile after mile, especially once the initial excitement fades and reality starts setting in? And that creeping regret is exactly what Consumer Reports is trying to protect buyers from, because once the paperwork is signed, Chevy's marketing promises disappear fast. You're left with the truck itself, and that's when expectations collide with reality. This pickup isn't built to impress over time, it's built to sell fast, and Consumer Reports makes it clear those are two very different goals. They also highlight how inflation and modern standards have changed what cheap really means. A $22,000 truck today doesn't buy what it used to, and pretending otherwise is dangerous. Consumer Reports argues that Chevy is leaning on nostalgia, hoping buyers remember older work trucks that were basic but bulletproof. The problem is, those trucks were overbuilt in key areas, and this one simply isn't. Another issue that keeps coming up is payload and towing numbers. On paper, they look acceptable. In the real world, Consumer Reports suggests they'll feel strained. This is the kind of truck that technically can do the job, but you'll feel like you're asking too much every time you load it up. That constant strain doesn't just hurt performance, it accelerates wear, and long-term reliability takes the hit. Consumer Reports also warns about buyer demographics, and this part is almost uncomfortable. They suggest this truck will mainly attract people who don't fully understand truck limitations yet. First-time buyers, young drivers, or shoppers laser focused on monthly payments. Chevy knows exactly who this is for, and Consumer Reports implies that's not an accident. And once those buyers realize what they purchased, options become limited. Trading it in early means eating depreciation. Keeping it long-term means living with compromises that never go away. Consumer Report stresses that regret isn't caused by one big flaw. It's caused by dozens of small annoyances that stack up every single day. The infotainment system, for example, is described as functional but dated, almost immediately behind the curve. Consumer Reports notes that tech ages faster than anything else in a vehicle, and starting out behind puts this truck at a disadvantage from day one. In a few years, it won't feel old. It'll feel obsolete. What makes this situation worse is how competitive the market actually is. Consumer Reports compares this truck to compact pickups and even crossovers with utility-focused trims that offer better comfort, better safety, and better real-world usability. When a pickup loses that comparison, it raises a serious question about who it's actually for. And this is where Consumer Reports' criticism becomes less about Chevy and more about buyer awareness. They're not saying nobody should buy this truck, they're saying too many people will buy it for the wrong reasons without understanding the trade-offs, because the price tag screams bargain louder than the fine print ever could. As this truck moves closer to launch, Consumer Reports continues to dig, and the early picture isn't flattering. The more you analyze it, the more it feels like a product designed to exist in ads and headlines rather than driveways and job sites. especially once the miles start piling up and the true cost of cheap begins revealing itself in ways that buyers won't see coming at first. And once those real-world costs start showing up, Consumer Reports says the disappointment curve gets steep. Little things turn into big frustrations. Thin door panels that flex, seats that lose support too quickly, switches that feel worn far earlier than they should. None of these issues alone kill a truck, but together they slowly erode the sense that you made a smart purchase. Consumer Reports also raises concerns about how this truck will age in harsh environments. Heat, cold, job sites, bad roads. This is where budget engineering gets exposed. Cheaper plastics crack sooner, budget seals dry out faster, suspension components feel tired long before they should. Chevy may call it simple, but Consumer Reports calls it less forgiving. There's also the issue of expectations versus branding. Chevy's reputation is built on tough, dependable trucks, and Consumer Reports argues this model risks damaging that image. When buyers see a bow tie on the grille, they expect a certain level of durability. If this truck fails to meet that expectation, the disappointment hits harder than it would with an unknown brand. Fuel economy doesn't escape scrutiny either. While Chevy hints at efficiency gains, Consumer Reports suggests real-world numbers may fall short once the truck is actually used like a truck, hauling tools, loading the bed, driving at highway speeds. Suddenly that efficient setup doesn't look so impressive, and the savings Chevy promises start shrinking. Another overlooked factor is driver fatigue. Consumer Reports points out that uncomfortable seating, road noise, and vibration don't just make drives annoying, they make them exhausting. Over long commutes or work days, this truck may wear down its owners faster than competitors that cost just a bit more up front. What really fuels the controversy is how predictable this all feels. Consumer Reports has seen this story before. Automakers chase a magic price point, strip too much away, and rely on brand loyalty to carry the rest. It works at first, sales look strong, headlines stay positive, then the ownership data rolls in and the narrative changes. And that's the phase Consumer Reports is clearly trying to get ahead of. They're not waiting for complaints, recalls, or reliability scores to tell the story after the damage is done. They're looking at the design philosophy now and saying this truck is built to win a pricing war, not an ownership marathon. The uncomfortable truth is that Chevy didn't build this truck for truck people. They built it for spreadsheet shoppers, buyers who sort listings by lowest price first, who focus on monthly payments instead of total cost, who assume new automatically means smart. Consumer Reports argues that mindset is exactly what turns a cheap truck into an expensive mistake. And as more pre-production impressions, dealer leaks, and early specs continue to surface, the warning signs keep stacking up. This isn't about hating on Chevy or gatekeeping truck ownership, it's about recognizing when a deal sounds too good because it probably is, especially when long-term durability, safety, and satisfaction are quietly sacrificed just to hit that headline-grabbing $22,000 number. And the deeper Consumer Reports goes, the more this truck starts to look like a lesson in modern cost-cutting rather than smart engineering. They point out that when manufacturers chase ultra-low prices, quality control often becomes inconsistent. One truck might feel fine, another might feel slapped together, and that unpredictability is poison for long-term ownership. There's also concern about how this pickup will be treated at dealerships. Consumer Reports hints that ultra-budget models often get less attention during pre-delivery inspections and warranty work. When a vehicle is marketed as cheap, it's often treated that way throughout its life cycle, and owners feel that difference when small issues get brushed off as normal. The warranty itself doesn't inspire much confidence either. While Chevy's coverage looks standard on paper, Consumer Reports stresses that warranties don't cover inconvenience, downtime, or lost work. If this truck spends more time in the shop than expected, that low purchase price starts losing its shine fast. Another problem is how quickly this truck could become irrelevant. Automotive tech and safety standards move fast, and Consumer Reports warns that starting at the bottom means there's nowhere to fall but behind. In just a few years, this pickup could feel like a relic, especially when competitors continue adding features without massive price hikes. They also call out how Chevy frames simplicity as a virtue. Consumer Reports argues that simplicity should mean reliability and durability, not missing basics. Manual adjustments, lack of sound insulation, and outdated interfaces aren't charming. They're reminders that something was taken away, not thoughtfully designed. And then there's pride of ownership, something rarely mentioned in spec sheets, but deeply felt by drivers. Consumer Consumer Reports suggests that over time, owners may stop feeling proud of this truck and start feeling defensive about it, constantly explaining why they bought it and what they were trying to save. That emotional cost matters more than people like to admit. Even fleet buyers aren't immune to the criticism. Consumer Reports questions whether businesses will truly save money if these trucks need more frequent repairs or replacement. A cheap purchase price doesn't help if downtime increases and reliability becomes a question mark. The irony is that Chevy absolutely knows how to build great trucks. That's what makes this situation frustrating. Consumer Reports implies this isn't a capability issue, it's a decision issue. Chevy chose price dominance over balance, and that choice shows in nearly every corner of the vehicle. As more potential buyers start digging beyond the headline price, Consumer Reports expects the narrative to shift. The excitement around cheapest pickup in America begins to fade once people realize cheap doesn't mean clever, and affordable doesn't automatically mean smart. And with every new detail that leaks out, every early impression that confirms the compromises, the warning grows louder. This truck isn't a breakthrough, it's a gamble, and the people most likely to lose are the ones drawn in by that $22,000 number without fully understanding what that number really buys them once the keys are in their hands and the daily reality of ownership begins to settle in. And Consumer Reports keeps circling back to one uncomfortable comparison that Chevy would rather avoid: used trucks. Not beat up junkers, but well-maintained, proven models with stronger drivetrains and better build quality. For the same money, buyers could step into something that's already proven it can survive real work, real miles, and real abuse. That contrast makes this new truck's weaknesses even harder to ignore. They also point out how this truck may struggle with identity. It's not refined enough for daily comfort-focused drivers, and it's not robust enough for serious truck users. That awkward middle ground is dangerous because it leaves owners constantly feeling like they chose the wrong tool for the job, no matter how they use it. Noise levels are another quiet complaint that grows louder over time. Consumer Reports notes that thin insulation and cost-saving materials allow road noise, wind noise, and engine sound to creep into the cabin. At first, it's tolerable. After months of ownership, it becomes draining, especially for people who drive long distances or use the truck every day. Then there's the issue of future-proofing. Consumer Reports warns that vehicles built to the lowest possible cost often lack flexibility for upgrades. Adding features later, improving comfort, or modernizing tech becomes expensive or impossible. What you buy on day one is essentially what you're stuck with for the life of the truck. Chevy defenders will argue that not everyone needs bells and whistles, and Consumer Reports agrees, to a point. The problem is that this truck doesn't just skip luxury, it skips essentials that improve safety, usability, and durability. There's a difference between minimalism and neglect, and this truck keeps flirting with that line. What really amplifies the warning is how confident Chevy seems in the marketing. That confidence encourages impulse buying. Consumer Reports stresses that impulse buys are exactly how people end up with vehicles that don't fit their needs long term, especially when the initial excitement is driven by price rather than performance or quality. And once the novelty wears off, owners may start noticing how often they compromise. Compromising on comfort, compromising on capability, compromising on confidence every time they load the bed or hit the highway. Consumer Reports argues that constant compromise is the fastest way to turn a deal into a daily frustration. As the release date gets closer, more eyes are on this truck and more skepticism is creeping in. The hype cycle is beginning to crack, and Consumer Reports is making sure buyers understand that cheap entry points often come with expensive lessons attached. Because in the end, the real cost of this $22,000 pickup may not show up on the window sticker at all. It shows up over time in missed expectations, growing annoyances, and that sinking realization that saving money up front doesn't matter much when the vehicle itself keeps reminding you why it was so cheap in the first place, especially once the miles keep climbing and the compromises stop feeling theoretical and start feeling permanent. And that's the moment Consumer Reports wants buyers to picture before they ever step into a showroom. Not the shiny brochure, not the influencer clips, not the brag of owning a new truck for a shockingly low price. They want buyers to picture a random Tuesday 6 months in when the excitement is gone and all that's left is the driving experience you can't escape. Because at that point, the math changes. The missing features stop being abstract, the weak spots stop being potential issues and start being daily irritations. The truck still runs, sure, but it doesn't feel good, it doesn't inspire confidence, and it doesn't feel like it's on your side when you ask it to work hard. Consumer Reports also highlights a quiet danger most buyers overlook: normalization of disappointment. Owners slowly adjust their expectations downward. They stop expecting comfort, they stop expecting capability, they stop expecting longevity, and that adjustment is how bad purchases survive without immediate backlash. Not because they're good, but because people convince themselves they're fine. That's why the phrase "only idiots will buy" isn't really about intelligence. It's about information. Consumer Reports is blunt because subtle warnings don't work when a price tag is this loud. They're saying the smartest buyers will pause, compare, and walk away if the value doesn't hold up under scrutiny. And when you zoom out, the bigger issue isn't just this truck, it's what it represents. A market where affordability is used as bait, while durability and satisfaction are quietly sacrificed. A strategy that assumes buyers won't look past the first number they see. Consumer Reports is pushing back against that trend hard. Chevy may sell a lot of these trucks early. There will be headlines about strong demand. Dealers will move inventory. But Consumer Reports isn't focused on launch day success. They're focused on ownership year reality. That's where reputations are made or broken, not in the first wave of excitement. So before anyone gets defensive, it's worth remembering this: Consumer Reports doesn't hate cheap trucks. They hate bad value. And in their view, this $22,000 pickup crosses a line where saving money up front creates too many long-term penalties to ignore. Because the real tragedy wouldn't be that this truck exists. The real tragedy would be buyers believing this is the best option they have, when smarter, more balanced choices are sitting just slightly above it in price and miles ahead in satisfaction. And that's the final warning Consumer Reports leaves hanging in the air. This truck isn't a gift to buyers. It's a test of whether people will choose headline pricing over long-term reality, whether they'll chase cheap instead of worth it, and whether they'll realize before it's too late that the most expensive vehicles aren't always the ones with the highest price tags, but the ones that quietly disappoint you every single day you own them.